Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Vosh. It's been a minute since we talked last. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has been a minute. I remember it though. I remember the conversation on political effectiveness. If I recall, it was a little while ago, but I recall the gist.
Yeah, it was a minute ago, but I wanted to have something more conversational where I got to like interview you and get some background into like how you started and like you know, how you I guess embarked on this journey as a content creator.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk.
Yeah, so you know, here I'll do like cuz I'll cut this later, but I'll do this whole thing. Hi, welcome Vosh. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. So tell me, you're a part of BreadTube, right? You're like a leftist commentator on the internet,
To the
right?
extent that BreadTube still exists, yeah, I guess I am.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you your content journey? How did it start?
Um, well, I've been a big fan of live streaming basically for as long as the technology has existed. I was a big fan of StarCraft and StarCraft 2 in the esports scene. And they like Koreans playing StarCraft kind of kicked off the streaming as like a thing.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the first people to get into that tech over here in the West was a guy called Destiny, who did
Yeah.
StarCraft and later on politics. And
Yeah.
when I graduated from university with my degree, I had trouble getting a job in the area because the place where I went to college, Northern California, kind of an
Uh,
economic dead zone. It's not doing great over there. I had a hard time finding a job. So while I was waiting on one, I thought, well, might as well give this a shot. So I started streaming. And within just a couple of weeks, actually, of starting, I was making more than minimum wage from donations. Uh,
Holy shit.
no, it went really well really quickly because I was already kind of known in Destiny's community. So there was like
Yeah.
a like cross platform interaction kind of. Um,
And what did you think resonated with those first few people who came to your channel and subscribed and followed you?
Oh, I don't know. Their taste must have been terrible. I've rewatched those old streams. I sucked back then. I have no idea. They just abominably bad taste from very kind people is the best explanation that I have.
Well,
I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, the loud like bombastic debate stuff wasn't as common back then as it is now, so there was probably a good bit of novelty to it.
So you're doing mostly debates?
It's pretty difficult to get good debates these days because the right has like completely conceded empiricism as a concept. These days, it's mostly like news, political analysis, that kind of stuff. But when I get an opportunity for a good debate, yeah, that's my favorite thing to do.
What was the first like memorable debate that you had, like that you like felt like you hit something or like it struck a chord with an audience and you just felt like, oh, this is something that I want to keep exploring.
Well, I remember that while debating the Kill Stream, which was like a big Nazi podcast, I said the N-word with the hard R to make a point. That's definitely had a lasting impact on my YouTube career.
That's Ethan Ralph, right?
No, that was later. The Kill Stream guys, I don't even remember their names. Wait, was it Ethan Ralph? I can't remember. They've all kind of like faded away in my memory, but I remember the N-word. That was
So
memorable
wait,
enough.
you were debating them and they just like flung the N-word at you or
Well,
something?
well, they were doing it a bunch,
Uh-huh.
and then I did it too, because I think a lot of guys like that have the impression that like when they're edgy and racist, they auto win debates or conversations because they're like they're so unbothered, they're so cool, they're so disaffected.
Yeah.
When in reality, it makes them look super lame. So
Yeah.
I just it's kind of like a reminder to them, like I literally don't care, like do the debate,
Yeah. That's
something like that.
crazy. Yeah, when did you ever have like a debate where like as soon as you shut everything off, you're like thinking about it afterwards and you just like you're like, "Oh man, I wish I would have said this." Like this would have I imagine this is a feeling that happens often where you're like you're just kind of rethinking it in your head and you're like, "Do you ever have moments like that?"
Yeah, well, there's kind of no way to avoid the like shower argument afterwards sometimes.
Yeah.
Even if you do super well in a debate and you feel like you crushed or whatever, you're always like, oh man, at 37 minutes and 14 seconds in, I could have said this and that would have ended the career. And like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
I think it's pretty unavoidable. For the most part, I try not to because again, I think it's like an inevitable part of having disagreements with people that you reflect in it. and you try to like redo it in your head. There have been a couple of times I thought I could have done better. I think the first time I debated Sargon of Akkad, I did, in my opinion, pretty poorly, so I thought over that one
Yeah.
a while, but I tried to learn from it.
Yeah. Did you debate him during the whole Gamergate thing, or that was that much later?
It would have been later. It would have been like
Yeah.
2020 or something like that. But we
Gotcha.
had a debate on like he wants England to be an ethno state or something. We had a debate about that. It
He
was
wanted what?
well he's an ethno stater. He thinks that
Yeah.
England should only be like a country for ethnically English people.
No
Which
way. Is that like unironic? I'm sorry. I'm like not familiar with him or any other stuff. He like for anybody who's not familiar with him, like is that like that's his like whole premise to hit everything? He's like
no,
an
he
ethno
no,
shit
he
guy?
explicitly said that. I'm not reading between the lines. He
Oh
directly
shit.
said that. So
Yeah.
he's only gotten worse since then. But we talked about that and some other stuff, and it was pretty fun.
That's wild because I think I've only heard of him through the whole like Gamergate stuff and from watching documentaries because I wasn't much on the internet around that time. So it's wild. It really is. That being said, like as far as debates, like do you go in with like a specific strategy? Like how do you do you go in? Oh yeah, I'm gonna murder this guy if I say this. If after, I'm sorry, my chat is playing sound bites. I don't know if you can hear it. They just played a fart.
No, I can't hear it, but I'm glad you're having fun over there.
Yeah, they just played a fart. It just caught me by surprise. But yeah, so yeah, just do you ever go with like a specific strategy?
Well, I think one of the most important things you can do in a debate is tone match. A
Yeah,
lot of people in my audience really like to see me, epically destroy this Nazi or this like racist guy or whatever. And
yeah,
I enjoy that too. But no matter how bad the opinions of a person are, if you go at them like super aggro when they're coming across chill, even if they're being completely disingenuous,
yeah,
um, you risk like kind of alienating a person who might be more convinced by tone than by like the actual substance of the argument. So I think it's important to go into most debates with a kind of open mind when it comes to how it's going to unfold. And ultimately, your goal is like, all right, what will the winning shot here be? Is my goal to like present an argument they can't defeat, or is it to make them look stupid? And depending on the kind of person you're talking to, either one of those might be the right direction to go.
yeah. Okay. Hold on one sec. I'm gonna turn off the sound alerts because this shit's just distracting me right now. I
I'm glad
apologize.
people are having fun.
Yeah, I mean, somebody just subscribed, which I appreciate the sub, but like, let's wait a second for the. But anyway, back to this. Yeah, because I'm really interested in that. It's still giving me sound bites. Anyway, here I can't do anything about it. Okay, forget about it. I'm sorry.
Not at all.
Uh, so yeah, I'm really interested with that whole debate thing because I'm not really a part of like the debate, I guess, quote unquote. There's like a kind of a derogatory way of referring to it on the internet of like the debate bro, debate me bro, whatever it is thing, right? Where people like kind of I've seen Hassan like make fun of that, like people who debate on the internet like that. But I do find it like there really is like a way of like doing it art like in a artful way to say it where like the way you just described where you're not like just turning it into people essentially butting heads and entrenching themselves into the like you know into their side and just making situation like the whole conversation worse. I've actually had that happen to me where I like lost my cool in a debate and it just like looked awful on my end. So I totally understand what you're describing now of like it's much better to just like sit and kind of just talk things through, even if you have like a massive disagreement with a person.
Yeah, well, I think the bad reputation to a large extent comes from the fact that if a person is being kind of like annoying and overly aggressive,
Yeah.
you can make a debate out of anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes, in fact, and this sounds weird to say, but it's really true if you think about it. It's possible to be correct, but then
Uh-huh.
in advocating for the correct thing to be wrong. So,
Yeah.
like a good example of this would be if a person, like say a layman, makes a point that is fundamentally correct. Like the important parts of what they've said are true. They've gotten the gist of it. They're not like like a historian might have nitpicks, But they're pretty much right. And then, like, you can imagine a debate bro might slide in, and they might be like, you got this part wrong, so you don't know a thing about what you're talking about. Yeah. And we have, like, an image of that in our heads, of somebody who weaponizes the aesthetic of logic, or the aesthetic of, like, high-minded engagement, to really
Yeah.
just be kind of an obnoxious dipshit. And that's a thing that can happen, for sure. But debate as a whole, like as a concept, the ability to directly challenge bad ideas, that's not only is that really important, it's also fundamental to human communication. So there's no getting away from it. It's just a matter of doing it well.
Yeah, if you were like, let's say there's somebody who's watching right now and they're like, yeah, I really would love to be a part of this like whole debate culture or whatever on YouTube or on social media. Like, what would be the first thing you tell them to watch out for, and then another thing that would be good for them to explore so that they can kind of find their own voice?
Well, being right is obviously really important, but the
Yeah.
most interesting part of doing the whole debate thing isn't just being right, it's finding the best way to convince people that you are right. So
Uh-huh.
oftentimes it's more like a rhetorical exercise. There are some issues where being right are super easy, like climate change.
Yeah.
We've had the dealio on climate change for a good long time. We know what's going on there. But does it like does it like change the fact that it remains this like hot button issue? Well, no, because ultimately, like, being right isn't enough, which sucks, but it's also kind of the world we live in.
Hmm.
And additionally, sometimes some topics and some people are like attention whirlpools.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people who have a good amount of talent for debate or engagement get kind of like sucked into this like infinite recurring drama cycle. Usually, just a couple of people acting in bad faith, or they like dredge it
Hmm.
up over and over again, and that can never end sometimes. So I think it's just, you have to be smart with your time and attention, but there's always room for more of it, right?
Yeah. And I guess putting the debate stuff aside, I'm also curious. Like you got your start in BreadTube. You kind of hinted that there is no more BreadTube. But I mean, how did you? I mean, what was the first thing that introduced you to like leftist ideas, and how did you find yourself identifying with it?
When I was in high school, I had an AP US history class called
Yeah.
Comparative History, taught
Uh-huh.
by Professor Hinojosa at Beverly Hills High School. He was excellent and hot. He was really, really good at what he did. Talking about all these different governments and the way their systems are organized and why they're organized that way, and got me really interested in governmental organization in a way that I didn't really think was possible. Before then, I thought I was interested more in the technical sciences. And after that, I went to university, and there have just been a chain of professors that they didn't. I don't think a professor has ever like done like been leftist at me. I don't think I've ever had a professor go like, this is what we're going to talk about now, and kind of like drag the conversation that way. Normally, they just bring up a couple of concepts that I find interesting, and I look into it further, and it's like, oh, okay, well, all right, this makes a little bit of sense. This makes a little bit of sense, and I think that's a good way to get into leftism, right? Like, because it's not meant to be dogmatic.
Mhm.
Leftist analysis is fundamentally critical. It's about free thinking. So ideally, people would get into it through a kind of free-minded curiosity, not just because they're memorizing bit parts.
Gotcha. So would you say you became more interested in like the philosophical aspect of it, or did you like immediately become an activist and start doing like certain things, like going to protests or uh, things that other leftists like who are activists do?
Well, I
Or
did some activist like stuff when I was in
uh,
college and university, though I've never been too much of an outdoorsy or social person. So a lot of it was like just reading or engaging with the ideas, and I enjoyed that very much. Through university, I did a number of projects with upperclassmen and with professors pertaining to like prison vocational programs, a lot of stuff having to do with like unhoused people or the criminal justice system, because there was an overlap with our criminology department, and I enjoyed all of that. And sometimes that would involve like doing some kind of organizing or protest, going to a juvenile hall to like get interviews, that sort of thing. For the most part, though, it was just a lot of reading.
nice. Yeah, I would say like in my case too, like a lot of the my political and philosophical I guess foundation came from different teachers that I had in high school. I had this teacher that was like really adamant about us reading Howard Zinn, A
Mhm.
People's History of the United States. That book was like kind of like the beginning of me discovering all those like this alternate version of American history
I
that
read it as well.
was
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's just funny how I don't know. Did you ever have this feeling like as you're exploring these ideas that you had the wool pulled over your eyes and you're like kind of having to look for this information that kind of like shows gets you closer to the reality instead of this like hyper inflated idea of what history, at least in the sense of history, because in my case it was through history that I came into this stuff, but that like our history is like super, cosmeticized, I guess, for like
I'd always had a kind of like, I don't know if it's necessarily conspiratorial, but like a
yeah,
defaultly like critical attitude, even when I'm like 10 or whatever, of like,
yeah,
oh, there's stuff they don't tell us. But it was like very unformed conspiracism initially, because at the
yeah,
beginning, like that doesn't mean anything. It's like when
yeah,
people go on anti-vax Reddit, they're like, oh, the pharmaceutical companies are lying to you. And it's like, well, yeah, but not about this. They lie about a ton of other stuff, but this is pretty straightforward. So it's like a distrust of larger institutions, but it has to be like channeled appropriately, right? Like flat earthers, oh, the government doesn't want you to know stuff. Well, yes, of course the government doesn't want you to know stuff, but the Earth is still round. You
yeah,
have to know like why it's all happening. And the interesting thing is like a lot of people kind of get the impression, I think, that lefties tend to be sort of conspiratorial. Maybe a lot of them are, but I've
yeah,
actually found my conspiratorial tendencies have disappeared the more that I learn about the world, because it seems like all of the times that something like nefarious and behind the scenes has happened, it's
yeah,
it's not some complicated like plot. It's just a continuation of systems of power that aren't secrets. They're public. They're known. Like, is it a conspiracy that the CIA, intervened in Latin American countries to promote American business interests? No. And also, is it surprising? Like, look at what businesses do in America. Like, this isn't, it's not like moon landing stuff. It's pretty
yeah,
straightforward.
yeah. I think the first conspiracy theory that I ever got into was a JFK one.
Mhm.
I watched what's his name? Oliver Stone's movie as a kid. I was like obsessed with it, where he like breaks down all the conspiracies and he shows like the lawyer in New Orleans who went after all that stuff. What was the conspiracy that kind of started opening those floodgates for you? Was there one, or
Well,
did
I
you
mean,
kind of start it? Yeah,
initially, I was the kind of person who would just go like, "Oh yeah, of course 9/11 was an inside job." Like, I guess I would just believe that stuff uncritically because obviously our government would lie, and obviously our government had an agenda. So why wouldn't
yeah,
they? The more I learn, the less I believe any of it. Not, mind you, because the government isn't sinister and nefarious or whatever, but because
uh-huh.
oftentimes these conspiratorial narratives assign like an undue level of competence and coordination to the government. The government can't keep secrets for shit. The idea that it could keep secrets like this, we know so much about what the CIA and the FBI did during the Cold War. We knew about a lot of it even during the time. It's not
Yeah,
like and those are intelligence agencies. Whereas like anything with 9/11 or the moon landing, this would be like this gigantic interdepartmental thing. I think for the
mm,
most part, people tend to be incompetent. They make mistakes that are very visible and very easy to see. And I think that a lot of times when we talk about conspiracy theories, we're kind of projecting a desire for control onto the world. We want the world to be a system that can be understood and controlled, because the idea that it's not controlled is kind of scary.
that's a really good way to put it. It kind of is like trying to establish order to this thing that you're kind of seeing unfold before you, and that you can't fully understand or comprehend all at once because there's so much going on at the same time, and it just feels like there's so many moving parts. I was looking at the this I'm not sure if you're following. There's an account, Jeffrey Epstein News on Twitter,
I'm
and they're
not
kind of
following
just
that exact account.
yo, bro, they're like sharing every day. They share a new person who is in like Jeffrey Epstein's little black book, and they give like a breakdown of their involvement with Epstein. And I mean, the first few people were like CIA agents and like heads of state and all this shit. And there is just like there's so many levels to how to everything. I guess it's hard to grasp all of it. That's why I think often, you know, we tend to go towards conspiracy theories, at least to some extent, to try to explain what we see. And some of them end up being real. Other ones just end up being fantasy, but it is what it is.
I
Um,
think it's important to have a critical attitude towards this sort of stuff, right?
yeah,
Um, with Jeffrey Epstein, for example, it seems pretty obvious that um, part because it was the hip happening place to be, and part because he was deliberately trying to shield himself from prosecution. Epstein made
Yeah,
an effort to connect himself to as many powerful people as possible, so they would all have an interest in keeping him from getting arrested. And then when he
yeah,
finally does get arrested, of course they would have him killed. Like
yeah.
that seems pretty straightforward to me. I guess it's kind of conspiratorial, but I think it follows with the understanding we have of these systems. It seems straightforward enough.
Yeah, yeah. The funny thing is, the whole Jeffrey Epstein too thing started as a conspiracy theory before people actually believed it. It was like one of those before the information came out. Um, yeah, I'm curious if you don't mind me asking about some, I guess, debates that you've had in the past.
Yeah, sure.
Or there was one situation that I saw maybe a couple of weeks ago that you had with Mr. Beard. You
Yes,
familiar with
yes.
that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, can you explain what happened to anybody who may not understand or may
Yeah,
not know?
there's like an infinite amount of context depending on how granular you want to be, but the basic gist of it is like 2.5 years ago, I
Yeah.
had a debate with a black woman. This will be important, mind you, which was about like comments that she had made that gave me the impression that she thought it was ethically justifiable for non-white people who were victims of colonialism to eject white people from their countries because those white people were the descendants of their direct colonizers. The example being South Africa, where South Africa has a population of about 6 million white people, who are, of course, the descendants of like largely Dutch colonizers from a long time ago. And I don't think it's good to expel people based on their race, personally. And we had a big like 3-hour debate about that, where I got the impression she's pretty much like okay with white people being deported or killed, if the non-white people in a country want it. And this debate, despite it being pretty like straightforward from my perspective, I guess, has turned into literal years. This is like by far the most drama, a substantive debate that I've ever had,
Uh,
even though there was very little drama in the debate itself, because for years now there's been like this conga line of people who want to relitigate the context of the debate and like gaslight me on what happened. But I've gone over it like so many times. Like people keep wanting to argue and essentially accuse me of being racist, because I'm like invalidating the perspective of a non-white person, blah blah blah. And this just keeps happening over and over and over again. It'll probably keep happening too. There's no way out. We're on the karmic wheel of punishment now. I was a white man with an opinion, and that is a crime for which the punishment must be severe.
why do you think that happens so often on the left? Things like this.
Um, I think that a lot of people on the left have bought into the idea that non-white, or not just non-white, but like non-privileged people, so like trans people, non-white people, women, any group, whatever, should be given more leeway when it comes to arguments they have or bad ideas they might have,
Mm.
because it's like a part of their lived experience. So, for instance, you'll have like a pretty dumb idea presented by a person of color, which, I mean, everyone can present dumb ideas. This happens everywhere all the time. But if you like talk over that, there's like a small group of people in the online left, not the total online left, mind you. It's the same group of people every time, basically. This like collection of mostly white people who do these performative apologetics, who will go like, ah, well, you're speaking over their experiences. And it turns into this like infinitely granular, like liberal identity politics nonsense infighting. It's gotten rather funny to me because I've just gotten used to it. But this corner of the left is like so infighty; they're never going to accomplish anything.
Yeah, it's funny because it just becomes essentially a circle jerk over the same topic, like you said, relitigating the same situation over and over again. It's mostly white people who are saying and accusing you of this, right? Like with Mr. Beard, he's a white guy who lives in Australia, right? Which is kind of, I don't know, ironic to me that he would have like such a strong stance. And I think he like didn't he like miscontextualize some of your messages together too? And
Well, I think that there's a very small group. By very small, by the way, I mean like just this insignificant fraction of the online left, but that doesn't mean
yeah,
they can't be loud. Who are
yeah,
very good at convincing gullible people to be sympathetic to their terrible ideas under the pretext of them being victims. It's kind of like a white knight, like abusive manipulator woman dynamic, where there will be a
uh,
guy who, like, in the name of feminism, will defend anything that like a really bad lady does. and it just
Uh-huh.
goes on and on. I feel like it's that dynamic basically over again. I don't think that Mr. Beard is a bad person or anything like that. I just think that he's kind of like gotten suckered into the idea that there's some legitimate argument being made by those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't mean to say that he was a bad person either. I just saw it ironically from that point of view of him, you know. There were some things you said, and I just thought it was funny, you know, seeing the context of um, you know,
Oh, it
who
is
he
pretty.
is and what he
It is
was.
pretty funny though. I look
Yeah.
okay. There's a person who I think is cool who's getting dragged on Twitter right now because like 10 years ago, I mean 10 by the way, that's not an exaggeration, 10, so back in
Yeah.
2013, she said something that was like pretty racist because she was like a
Yeah.
totally different person back then. She's changed, like it's a whole thing. Anyway, I saw like, because there's been drama discourse in this, and I saw somebody who follows me going like, yeah, I was arguing with somebody to defend her, and then I saw their Twitter username was I hate crackers, and I as you can guess how productive that conversation was. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my god, like never ending. But
Yeah.
it's such a small group of people. I always try to make that clear because I don't want people to get the impression that the left is full of like white hating people, because it's not. It's just like there's a small group of white people who have been suckered into it, and a small group of non-white people who are like benefiting from the grift. But it's not. It's not a whole thing.
And people on the right love it because that's exactly what the Matt Walshers of the world are framing the left as.
Oh, they love it. They're all perfect bait for the right, 100%. They are like they exist to like validate every single negative preconception the right has about the left. It's very frustrating. Same with like the South Africa like discourse, right? So there's a
Yeah.
racist idea called fear of I believe retribution.
Uh-huh.
And the basic premise is like it refers to the fear that some white people have in countries where white people have been colonizers, that if they ever give full political power back to non-white people, that they would use it to punish white people. Now, historically, this isn't really a valid concern, and it's also not a good excuse against, you know, instituting democracy and racial equality. But like if white people are like concerned about this, like, oh, what if we give them their rights? They'll attack us or whatever. That's considered like a racist belief. And
Mhm.
if there are non-white people unironically arguing that they should be able to attack white people if given the power to do so, they're kind of validating that racist belief, you know, like they're doing the argument basically just from the other perspective.
Do you think Karen is a slur?
Yeah,
Really?
I'm just cool with people using it. I mean, we use slurs all the time, right? Bitch is basically a sexist slur. It's not entirely, but it's kind of like rooted in that. I mean, I said
Yeah.
cracker a second ago. I think that like if by slur we mean a pejorative term to refer to a specific identity, Karen's pretty female coded. It's pretty
Yeah.
white coded too, though not entirely. I've seen plenty of non-white people referred to as Karens, but it is like very female coded.
You think so? You think it's like straight up like racial slur on the level of like the N word?
Oh no, not in the level. No, not at all. I mean, because like it fits in the category. It's like an insult,
Yeah.
right? Like the N word is an insult, and like so is
Yeah.
calling person a butthead. But there's like huge textual differences.
Yeah.
I think we just use slurs pretty often. We use them about men and women most often. I think we have a lot of kind of dismissive terms for either group. And I think the question shouldn't be, is Karen a slur? The question should be, how harmful is it? To
Mhm.
which I think the answer is minimally. There's some real sexism levied against women. Like, they'll speak up a bit or be upset for a good reason, and people will be like, ah, you Karen. And it's like, okay, well, we're kind of just doing sexism right now. But I call people bitch all the time. So, you know, there's leeway.
Gotcha. Interesting. I never even thought of it like that. I thought it was just like I just saw it as a meme, kind of the whole Karen thing. I didn't see it. I mean, I don't see the same racial history. I see it as a derogatory term, of course, but I don't see the same like racial history or the same. A lot of the slurs that we have in America, they're just like, at least the way that I see them, they're just a way to enforce, you know, the separation between white people and other minorities. Right? You get most slurs used against Cubans or you know, Mexicans, or those slurs are used to like essentially highlight that they're immigrants, right? So yeah, that's why I often find that the slurs are used against white people are like they just kind of outline how much power they have in their whiteness.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's
for
why I
sure,
don't think
right?
that
Like
they're
that's
yeah
because like nobody cares about cracker except for Twitch, which permanently banned me for saying it, then unbanned me. But
Yeah.
like broadly, nobody cares. Yeah, I agree. It's because it's not just about like in the technical sense. Like, is Karen a slur? I think so. Like technically, but when we think
Yeah.
of a slur, like when we think in context, what do we mean by that? We obviously mean something that's like socially weighty, right? Like that has
Uh,
punch, and I don't think Karen does. I don't think there's an issue with people using it.
Interesting. Uh, who do you think Joe Biden is gonna win the nomination again for the Democrats?
Well, I barely think there's even going to be a primary. Like it's the process right now is so undemocratic. I've seen people sincerely arguing that like the last thing we need now is a primary because it would cause infighting. It's disgusting. Uh, yeah, but yeah, even if there was a full primary, even if every other candidate like got on stage and tried, I still think Biden would take it. He's honestly
Yeah.
done pretty well. Like, not to say he's been a great president or one that I would endorse broadly, but he's avoided huge major fuck ups and he's kept a pretty even temperament and he's kind of funny in a way that I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of people expected, and I think all of that will play favorably for him.
Corn pop.
He's kind of
That's
he
the
is
hits.
charming, you know.
Yeah. The corn pop thing, the hairy legs. I love those sound bites. So you think it's going to be Biden and Trump again?
Yeah, I don't think DeSantis has a chance in hell. And right now I give it to Biden over Trump. Maybe like
Really?
yeah, like 60-40, not perfect, not even
Uh,
like not a sweep or anything. I think Biden has a bit of a lead right now though, because especially because we haven't seen the consequences that the infighting between DeSantis and Trump will bring. That'll probably do a
uh
decent amount of damage, I think.
Wow. I was thinking the right is going to come out in droves. They're just so livid with Biden. Like to them, he's like demon, like a demon, in human flesh. So I don't know. I I really, Trump's kind of crazy. So you never know what comes out of him. If he did win again, I think that would be like kind of dangerous. Could be potentially be dangerous because he's just so fucking unstable. But but yeah, I just think Biden could fucking take it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to even take reasonable guesses at it this early on. We
Yeah,
haven't even started like the proper primary races yet. Yeah, for to the extent they're even going to happen. I'm hoping for good here, obviously. Like Trump winning at this point would be catastrophic. Though I think DeSantis winning would be far worse, so I am happy that I don't think he has a chance.
yeah. Do you think if Biden wins again, do you think he survives his whole term? Like he's like 85 or something.
Fuck, I have no idea. Doesn't he kind of give the energy of somebody who would live unnaturally long though?
Yeah,
Yeah, like he'll just live a weirdly long time. That's just the impression that I get from him vibes wise. Of course, I
yeah.
have no idea whether that's gonna be true.
They got him in the White House in the Oval Office, just doing blood swaps like Keith Richards to
Oh yeah,
keep him
keep it
alive.
for as long as he needs. Keep that man a chugging as far as he can go. Besides, he'll probably only get funnier as he gets older, since it seems to be whenever his like brain slips that he says like the really funny shit.
Oh yeah. Do you think he's like senile? Like you think he's all there, or you think he's like kind of halfway there? He's like those grandfathers that will like say like fucked up shit at one point and then realize, oh shit, no,
I think
kind
he's
of lost
I think he's
filter
probably half there, I think.
half there.
Yeah, because I don't think that for what it's worth, I think Trump is as well. They just express it in different ways. I think that they're both like equally forgetful and they stumble over their words pretty much the same amount. The difference is that Trump, with his history as an entertainer, is way better at chaining it into something that sounds like it was just him being eccentric rather than him
Yeah,
having a brain fart. He does this all the time in his
yeah,
speeches. So yeah, it's they're both really old. Our democracy is fucked.
yeah. I got to be honest with you though. There's one thing I miss about Trump's. His rallies just looked like it was a stand-up routine, and he would just like roast the shit out of everybody, even in his own party. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I always, I mean, it's kind of fucked when you're watching a president just use their speeches as like and just watch it as like entertainment value instead of like something that should be taken seriously, right? Or I don't know. Maybe I'm alone on this, but
Well, I mean, the American voters sure turned out quite a bit in 2016, 2020 to affirm they do indeed like it when a president is funny.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be pretty difficult to go back to the like Obama era of let's just relax and enjoy the fact that our leaders are competent. I don't think that
Yeah.
can really happen again. It's pretty much just going to be like this infinite. Yeah, it's like sports forever now. I don't know how we get out of this.
Oh yeah, it definitely feels like teams. It feels like teams, and I even had a conversation with the quartering. I asked them about this. It often feels like it's so much about teams and playing sides that people will actively become more and more disingenuous just so they can continue to fit into that box.
Yeah, no, I agree, right? Like this is one of the reasons why I find it difficult to get debates these days because
Yeah.
in 2019 when I started, I would be able to debate Trump supporters who actually had sincere beliefs about something. Like I could
Uh,
talk with them about immigration or tax policy, even if I thought they were really wrong about something. Like we could talk about it, like we could have a discussion about it. Sometimes
yeah.
I even got the impression they were kind of like reevaluating their views, but for the
Uh,
past couple of years, none of this has been true. They will like say something that is just flatly empirically incorrect that any amount of research would show is incorrect, and you can show them it's incorrect and they won't care and it doesn't matter, and it's all purely just like theatrics at this point, which and a lot of those debates are just boring to do because at that point they're just getting like an audience to their insanity for free. um yeah, it's like anti-empiricism. It goes beyond
mm.
anti-intellectualism because they're not just like disregarding the processes by which you arrive at truth. Now they don't seem to care about truth like at all. And in the face of that, overwhelming victory can only come in the form of like superior strength, which is what I'm
Mhm.
hoping we get because the majority of Americans do actually support some degree of trans rights. I'm kind of hoping that what's been happening lately will, energize people who might have not otherwise been engaged, especially young people.
You mean all the boycotts against the brands?
Well, I mean that like half the country now has like anti-trans laws getting cycled through their state
Mm.
their state legislators constantly.
Mhm.
Florida, the bill that allows them to kidnap trans children or like not trans children, children who may or may not be trans based on vibes, just like insane stuff like that. Um there's a lot of bad stuff out there and I think the Democrats need to do a better job of, pointing out how alarming it is.
I often feel like you brought up Florida, like this all this stuff happened under DeSantis. I feel like he just when he initially got elected, he was just like, I'm just gonna see how I can destroy Florida because he's trying to get Disney to leave. There was that bill, there was the name the Don't Say Gay bill.
Mhm.
Now there's this bill that you're talking about. I mean,
Don't Say
it's
Gay
just
bill has been extended to 12th grade now, by the way. Teachers are
really.
having to like submit all of their books in their libraries and classrooms to state approval because they risk a felony lawsuit from like or from the state or from parents if there's anything in there that's identified as like sexual grooming material, which at this
Mhm.
point means that like an 18-year-old college senior seeing a book that acknowledges the existence of gay people could warrant like years in prison for the teacher. It's pretty bad over there.
How far do you think is government overreach? You think this is like a definitive government overreach, but how far, like you think DeSantis, ironically being a Republican, because they're all about small government, right? But he's just like being so intrusive in all these like policies that they're pushing. You think how far do you think government,
Well,
it
a lot of
counterprises it?
this is
Yeah,
objectively unconstitutional. Like that's
yeah,
not yeah, I'm not a constitutional scholar or anything, but a lot of this like if you could do like snap judgment, is this allowed? Like a lot of it just isn't. However, the current Supreme Court is conservative and clearly
yeah.
in line with what's happening here. And also, I mean, possibly even worse, even if they weren't, it can take a long time for the legal process to bring a bad law to the Supreme Court for challenging. So
Mm.
that's what Republicans are doing all over the country right now. There have probably been dozens, maybe even hundreds of arguably unconstitutional bills that have been passed, and it's just not, there's nothing that can really be done about it. At least not through court, deliberation.
Gotcha. Where do you see the country going in the next few years?
Well, I guess a lot of it hinges on the 2024 presidential.
Hmm.
There are some trends that I consider positive right now. The anti-trans hysteria doesn't seem to be working with the GOP voter base as much as they seem to think that it should, What's
Mhm.
more, they didn't do as well in the midterms as they thought they were going to, and that's a pretty big deal. There are little bits and pieces of potentially good information here when it comes to like broader support, but you only need a small percentage of the country to be insane and vindictive to fuck things over. What we really need is blowback. What we need to do is recognize, like, oh, okay, so we have like a flagrantly undemocratic political party that's trying to destroy our constitution. Something needs to be done. And then ideally, a lot of them would be arrested on sedition charges. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's my, private fantasy. They do need to be removed from power, though. You can't have a democracy where half of the political power is held by people who are openly contemptuous of democracy. That's insane.
Yeah, and it's ironically the same people who are actively trying to present themselves as defenders of freedom and all this other stuff. Um, yeah, so where do you, if somebody for some reason doesn't know who Vaush is, where can they find you?
Oh, well, by typing my name in on YouTube, I imagine, or probably most other social media sites. Happy to have you.
That's VAUSH V on Twitter, right? And
Yes.
on YouTube, it's just VAUSH, right?
Yeah, I didn't get on that Twitter grind fast enough. I lost that initial handle. Tragic.
Yeah. Speaking of Twitter, I just was reminded of something. You had a pretty historic beef with J.K. Rowling at one point.
Yeah, that was fun.
So wait, tell me what happened with that.
Oh, it was, I'd say it was mostly her. It was like International Women's Day, and I tweeted something like J.K. Rowling could have shut up and been remembered for a century as a heartwarming children's author. She threw it all away for transphobia, blah blah. Women shut up and apologize, challenger. Women stop talking and shut up, something like that. Anyway, she took a screenshot of that and posted it and started a whole bunch of discourse that actually led to like news articles. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, going back to the Karen discourse, right? It's like a kind of petty sexism. Now, in my case, personally, the main thing that I remember from the whole drama was there were a bunch of leftists who did this hand-wringing over,
Yeah.
like, because I consider J.K. Rowling to be one of the prime speakers of a hate movement. And a lot of people on the left do as well. And in a situation of like, okay, well, somebody was like edgy, sexist towards her, what's the priority going forward? Like, how do we handle the resultant drama? And a lot of them weirdly turned on me, like, by being sexist against J.K. Rowling, you're giving our side a bad name. But what a lot of them don't realize, because this is like classic liberal civility politics, is that
Mm-hmm.
the worst thing that you can do in the eyes of J.K. Rowling when it comes to violence against women is to be a trans woman. There's not,
Yeah.
like, if J.K. Rowling cared about casual misogyny, then she wouldn't have allied herself with, like, every far-right person on Twitter who agrees with her. I think that people need to remember that the whole point of TERFs as, like, a political group is to be a shield for the far right. As a broad group, like, as a population, TERFs don't exist. Seriously, in the UK, where the TERF movement is at its strongest, women are significantly more pro-trans than men are, like by a huge amount. There just isn't really a TERF movement. But there is a small, loud group of women who claim to be TERFs or feminists or whatever else, who just have a bunch of weird far-right associations. And I think the whole thing's a psyop, personally. I don't think it should be taken seriously.
Yeah, I got one question here that I wanted to ask you.
Of course.
People are in my chat are asking about your background,
Mhm.
and if you have a favorite piece in your background.
Oh, you mean my background?
Yeah. Your bookshelves.
Oh, oh man, I've got a lot back there now. I'd have to think about it. Let me full screen. Wait, hold on. Hide self view, choose have. Can I not full screen my own thing? I have to actually look around. That's crazy. There are a couple of Warhammer miniatures that are up there, some of which I painted, some of which were made by fans. One of them is of me, which was like 3D printed, that I think is really, really cute. We've
That's
got
cool.
Leo Fotia down there, which is like the premier anime femboy.
Yeah.
We've got, oh god, we've got a ton of stuff from the Anime Expos I've been to. That microphone, that Blue Yeti over there, was the first mic that I got while streaming. It was gifted to me, which was a pretty significant investment on the part of the person who did so. And then like the
Nice.
yeah, there's like a ton back there. God, yeah, I don't know. It's hard
That's
to say.
cool.
It's like ceramics back there and everything.
So that's cool that you saved your first mic. You saved you have other stuff that you've saved over the years to remind yourself of like your humble beginnings and where you've come from and like how far you've gotten.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of sentimental about it. I tend to hold on to stuff. I don't think I've ever thrown out anything that was given to me by a fan. I obviously
Yeah.
can't show all of them behind me because that would get out of control pretty quick. But
Yeah.
I do keep all of it. Um, I mean, I have the first microphone that I got, the first webcam that I was given, stuff like that. Basically every component. I mean, even down to like the first laptop that I streamed on, I still have. Though that laptop is toasted. That thing that
Yeah.
can't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's important to hold on to. I think. I mean, I've only been doing this whole thing for maybe 4.5 years at this point. That's not a
Mhm.
huge amount of time in the context of like a lifelong career, but it certainly feels like a lot to me. And since it's such a support-based medium for for success, you know, people are directly watching you live. I think it's important to remember, like, if you ever buy something, for example, like if you buy like a cool item that you want, some decoration, whatever, and it's like $100, it's like $25 donos, you know? There's like a
Yeah.
material, yeah, you know what I mean? Like you should
Yeah.
always remember where it comes from.
Yeah. It's cool because like, it's very easy in this business to just lose touch with where you came from. So it's cool to see like you're just holding on to that. I hold on to so much shit from like even glasses, like just so I can remind myself, like at one point, nobody watched you. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I feel like it's humbling and it kind of helps you remember where you come, why you do what you do, essentially.
Yeah, people's egos do get out of control pretty often in this field. You know,
Yeah.
whatever could prevent that from happening would probably be good.
Yeah.
It's gone a bad direction for quite a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. I got one more question for you. Then I know you're a busy guy. I'll let you get back to it.
Go right ahead.
So the Mario movie, you watched that?
As a matter of fact, yes, I had the pleasure of watching that.
You a fan of the movie or no?
I fucking hated that movie. I hated
What?
that movie.
No.
I
Why you
hated
hate
it.
Why did you hate it?
Cause oh man, I feel like it was a bunch of cheap references, and it didn't do anything artistically different from your average Illumination film. It was just like it was just something to like soy at. And structurally, I feel like there was so much interesting stuff that it didn't want to do or engage with, which was really
Yeah.
disappointing because I'm not a hater. I'm not one of those people who thinks like, oh, it's a kids movie. I don't think that's
Yeah.
true. Like, yeah, if you're, you know, if if it's good, it's good. But I guess I guess okay. Here I'll make one argument, right? So I don't like do the whole rant. Okay,
Yeah.
one of the main things that bothered me is like Mario literally doesn't happen on Earth. It's in a totally different world,
Yeah.
with its own rules, and they
Yeah.
kind of acknowledge that in the movie. But I feel like so much more could have been done to artistically elevate like the surreality of the Mushroom Kingdom. One of the things
Yeah.
they could have really done was not use like a fuck ton of licensed music and a bunch of like stock Hollywood dramatic .wav soundtracks and crafted an
Yeah.
entire thing based off of the Mario songs that we all know. Like we've all played a Mario game. We know the that one where like the Koopas all do the dance. Like
Yeah.
yeah, we've all heard these, but there were like 2 points in the movie where they had faint like callbacks to the
Yeah.
incredible musical tradition of the series. I just a
Yeah.
lot of stuff like it's like that argument, but a bunch of it. I want more Mario.
Gotcha. So is it safe to say you were a fan of the Peaches song?
Ha! I didn't mind that as much as Adam from YMS did. Actually, I thought because maybe because I'm like soy facing for Jack Black or whatever. Like whatever he
Yeah.
can sing Peaches at me if he wants to. I think that's okay.
Peaches, 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 peaches. Such a good song. It's so simple and so good.
If I'll let Jack Black ruin a movie for me. I'm okay with that. He has my permission.
All right. Well, Vaush, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Say hi to your chat for me. Hope they're having a good time too.
They are,
And
of course we're speaking to Def Noodles, everyone. So everything that went with me and Vaush and Twitter and have you, Def Noodles.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Uh,
for coming on and having me on.
thank you. I appreciate you, Vosh. I'll
Yeah.
talk to you soon. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was nice. Let me just wait for this little cutscene to finish. And yeah, I know I found the treasure. I've cleared out the depths pretty much. Okay. Nice.